Hey there, cats and kitties. I am the Blues Man, Johnny Blues, and with this video, I'll be discussing my thoughts on episode 9 of the anime series Arslan Senki, or the Heroic Legend of Arslan. And man, this episode just kept me at the edge of my seat, on my tippy toes, throughout its entirety. And it was rife with commentary like anti-brainwashing, manipulation, religious, theological commentary, dictatorship commentary, all of these kinds of things. It was thick and blood-curdling in this episode. Of course, we're picking up where we left off with the information passed on from Carlin in his dying moments that Andragoras is still alive and he's being held within Ecbatana at the hands of basically Silver Mask Hermes, as we found out his name, and that he is the nephew of Andragoras, respectively. So you basically have Daryun and Narcissus deciding to go incognito and try to break into Ecbatana and figure out if they can place where the king is effectively being held. And this is interesting because, while this is going on and the suspense is building on that level, you have Arslan, he's stuck with Elam and he feels like the eighth man out. He feels like he's not accomplishing anything or doesn't have much to do. You have Elam, keeping the food fresh and the water fresh. You have Ferengis and Give, they're like sort of scouting out, soldiers, anybody from the enemy side, the Lusitanians who might, stumble upon them. They're just keeping a lookout. And of course you have Daryun and Narcissus doing their business. So you have Arslan, who is very much feeling like he's not amounting to much, and he's desperate for something to do. I mean, he's hounding Elam, even to the point of, hey, let's go fetch water together. It's kind of ridiculous, but you can see where Arslan's coming from. He just wants to feel useful. Everyone else around him is doing something, is amounting to some good for his efforts, for his best interest, and for the best interest of his cause. But he feels like, what am I doing about it? I need to do something. Even if it's a menial task like going and getting water, that kind of thing. And it's kind of like the buddy system. He and Elam, of course, are going, and then something happens, the rope snaps or whatever. Arslan's kind of taken it a little too personally, but Elam is like, hey, look, I'll go get another bucket. You go hide in that house over there. And at this point, I don't know if it's the owners of this particular little farmhouse or villa, whatever you want to call it, out in the middle of the woods. But Arslan, while Elam is off doing this, he hears guards accosting this father and daughter who may be, a family of means. It remains to be seen. But in effect, they're trying to, spirit away the daughter and have their way with her effectively. And Arslan being a character of honor, being a man of honor. He's growing up with this learning curve of slavery is bad and treating other human beings a certain way, in a despicable way, that's bad, and all this kind of stuff. So he maybe impetuously decides he's going to go and intervene. And this isn't necessarily the best choice of action, because if they put two and two together as to who he is, if they could recognize him, all would be lost. But of course they don't, and they're actually interrupted in the nick of time by a character that just astounded me, Etolle. And finally we have this confrontation. I'm glad they didn't wait ages and ages, episodes down from now. I'm glad they got this confrontation over with, because now it ramps up the stakes when we find that Etolle is completely accepting of the Yaldabaoth faith. He is a fully, fully recognized, faithful soldier, and, he believes his cause is the just one, the right one. Wow. Completely flummoxed is this kid. But he recognizes Arslan. He doesn't know, that Arslan is Arslan. I think it's absolutely hilarious that he is describing Andragoras and Arslan as having devil horns and being demonic and all this kind of stuff right to Arslan's face. And he's just like, huh? But you basically have this complete just, typhoon of realization that this kid is lost. Mentally, he's completely just thrust himself into the cause of the Lusitanian side, and he's got a little bit of power. He's got a little bit of backing in that he's overseeing this group of soldiers. They're under him. He is their commander. And so he's got a little bit of a chip on his shoulder, and I mean, when Elam just happens to come back right then and sort of re-interrupt the whole scenario, he draws his sword, and of course Elam draws his sword, and it looks like there's going to be a throwdown, but Arslan gets in between them. He's like, look, we're friends, or at least we know each other. We can just leave each other at peace for the moment. He's desperate for everyone to just go on their merry way. And that's a good, thing to have happen, because you basically have that realization that, oh crap, Elam has that realization. I ran into this guy back when I snuck into Ecbatana a couple episodes back or whatever it was. And yeah, he's going to know me on sight. So he's like putting a thing over his mouth and, so he can't be recognized. I mean, so much stuff was at risk, at stake, simply because of the convenience of these characters coming together. And everyone, luckily, just by the skin of their teeth, went on their merry way. Of course, we see what is unfolding in Ecbatana is absolutely gobsmacking, and not in a good way. I mean, you have this character, Bowden, who is like the chief, religious head, and he's like, I mean, comparisons and allusions to the Nazis and Hitler and everything like that, it's in full form, because they are basically they're pirating out all of the historical, medical texts from Pars, and they're just torching them all, burn the books, effectively, because he hasn't gotten his way. They won't put to death either Andragoras or Tahimane, so this is kind of like, I'm going to stretch my power along these lines, and I'm going to get my way in one way or another, and I'm going to burn the texts. And you have that one soldier who gets up in Bowden's face, and he's like, I understand, to our way of thinking, to the Yaldabaoth faith, these texts are blasphemous. They are demon teachings. But shouldn't we maybe at least explore them, read them, see if they have any sort of medical knowledge that would be, of some help to us? They have had sort of a, more prosperous society, and maybe they know more than we do and all this kind of stuff. And we see just how blood-curdlingly lethal the psychosis and the brainwashing is to this guy. He turns that soldier around, and he's like, anyone who is of the most stringent faith would not become ill, would not be, sort of thrust upon with disease, would never be faulty in the eyes of Yaldabaoth, the one true God. And anyone who would ever question such a thing. And this is where he's nudging the guy right to the end of that, like, tier overlooking the fire where they're burning all the books. Anyone who would question this has already succumbed to the seduction of the serpent. And he lunges that guy right over the end into the fire. This guy is burned alive simply for questioning, just for asking, are we doing the right thing? Are we doing the smartest thing? And I think it is completely just majestic, the commentary of Narcissus revealing to Daryun what Yaldabaoth translates to, like ancient Lusitanian, sacred ignorance. Keeping the muddled masses in check, not asking questions. I mean, we see this all throughout society and religion, and it's not just one religion, it's the majority of them. I'm sorry, but I don't conform to any religions because of that aspect of we're better than everyone else. It's our way and nobody else's. And you have that great bickering back and forth, almost bickering, between Arslan and Atole to that effect. He's saying, we went in to Ecbatana and we liberated all of the slaves that the Parsians were holding. And then we punished those serpentine, blasphemous Parsians. And you have Arslan like, but isn't that kind of contradictory? Because you're saying, all men are equal. All men are equal under the eye of your God. But if you don't conform to that God, you're not equal. Isn't there something wrong with that? And I love that. I love this commentary. Oh man, and it just builds up the tension even more, of course, because you have Narcissus and Daryun splitting off when they realize somebody's recognized Daryun, and they end up, sort of pulling a bait and switch where Narcissus decides to go off on his own a little bit. Daryun, of course, is tailing him and watching as all these guards are going to jump him, and they end up taking on the guards and wiping the floor with them effectively, hoping to get information about where Andragoras is being held. And of course, they don't get the information or enough information, so they figure they're going to do it again. They're going to go fishing again, as one of them says. And this is where just the absolute peak of the episode unfolds, with Daryun walking smack dab into Hermes Silver Mask, and the fight that ensues. And then, of course, you have Narcissus catching up, and it's like so gripping, and so on the edge of my seat was I watching this unfolding, because you have effectively Hermes is one hell of a fighter. Daryun is even leaving once they finally escape, and he's like, I might not have been able to hold my own against this guy if you hadn't shown up, to Narcissus. They end up, fighting this guy, slashing off his mask. It reveals that there are burns underneath. I love how Narcissus asks the question I'm thinking. Was he wearing that mask to keep his identity hidden, or was he wearing the mask to keep his wounds hidden? What matters more to the equation? Could it be that he's fearful of Parjin's recognizing him because, of course, he is the son of Andragoras' brother? Interesting question. So you basically have the boys, Narcissus and Daryun, hightailing it by the end of this episode. Just by the skin of their teeth. They're good, but, they just got out of there by the skin of their teeth with all those soldiers surrounding them. And the tensions are mounted, truly, by the end of this episode, to the point where I'm just, palpitating. I'm like, oh my god, I can't wait to get to the next one, because what in the hell is going to happen next? Especially with a little bit of a nod toward the beginning of the episode, with all of that sort of religious dictatorship, anti-brainwashing commentary. At the very beginning, we see that basically Hermes or Silver Mask is going and consulting a guy who can only be referred to perhaps as a seer or a prophet, maybe a magi or a mage. He's kind of like the Merlin, informing, a vizier, informing Silver Mask of the fact that Carlin is dead, and, Arslan is more of a threat than we think, and all this kind of stuff. You're not the only one who the sun shines on, which I believe is meaning, Arslan's out there, you guys maybe share blood and that kind of thing. Be wary of Arslan's potential prowess, is this, communication, this line of communication that's unfolding there. I find that absolutely fascinating with all the religious talk. And then you have Silver Mask, who we basically see it solidified in this episode that he is only using the Lusitanians as a means to an end, because he's not operating with this seer in mind under the Yaldabaoth faith. Unless maybe he's a Yaldabaoth faith seer, but that's not the impression I got. He's talking about sorcery and having called in the fog, during that battle that unfolded that went very badly, and that's where Andragoras got captured and Varese, Daryun's, uncle or whatever it was, got killed. And so that is mystifying to me. There's a mysticism going on right alongside this sort of religion, and all of these factors. It's like, what the hell is going on? So, of course, I'm left pitched by the end of this episode, not only from the momentum, not only from the story ramping up and the tensions rising and the battles, the heated battles that were just all kinds of awesome, but there are tons of questions that are opened up by the end of this episode, and I'm pitched to want answers. I can't wait to see what happens next. So I'd love to hear from you guys in the comments below what you thought of episode 9 of Arslan Senki, if you've seen it, and if not, I highly recommend you check it out from the start, and let me know what you thought of the story as it's unfolding thus far. I know there are other incarnations of it, so if you are privy to, events and story elements that are yet to come, spoilers effectively, please refrain from posting any of those, because I want to be surprised along the way. But if you have speculations, offer them up. Feel free to. I love having the conversation with you guys in the comments. And so, yeah, that'll be pretty much it for me on this. Hope this video finds you well, and I'll catch you all later. Peace.